Jonah was a prophet. God spoke to Jonah. "Go to Nineveh," God said. "The people there are wicked. Tell them to turn from their evil ways." Nineveh? Jonah shivered. It was a big, bustling city full of people who didn't believe in God. Jonah didn't want to go. Instead, Jonah decided to run away. He found a ship going in the opposite direction and hopped aboard. The ship set sail, its wooden hull creaking as it cut through the waves. The sun beat down from the sky, casting a golden glow over the endless expanse of water. Jonah found a comfortable spot on the deck and fell fast asleep, lulled by the gentle rocking of the ship and the warm sunlight filtering through the sails. Suddenly, a terrible storm blew up. Dark clouds gathered ominously, and the wind howled like a wild beast. The ship tossed and turned on the angry waves, its timbers groaning under the strain. Sailors ran frantically across the deck, their faces etched with fear and determination. Desperately trying to keep the ship afloat, they battled the elements with every ounce of strength they had. The captain, drenched and exhausted, found Jonah asleep amidst the chaos. "How can you sleep at a time like this?" he shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. "Pray to your God, maybe he will save us." The crew, desperate and terrified, joined in the plea. Jonah knew this was his fault. He felt a deep sense of guilt and responsibility. He admitted to the sailors, his voice heavy with remorse, "This storm is because of me. I ran away from what God wanted me to do," he confessed, his eyes filled with regret. "If you throw me overboard, the storm will stop," he said, accepting his fate. The sailors, though reluctant, knew they had no other choice. With heavy hearts, they prepared to cast Jonah into the raging sea, hoping for a miracle to save their lives. The sailors didn't want to hurt Jonah. They tried everything they could to save the ship, but the storm just got worse. Finally, they had no choice. They threw Jonah overboard. As soon as Jonah hit the water, the storm calmed. The sailors were amazed. God had stopped the storm. Jonah, meanwhile, was sinking down into the deep, dark sea. He closed his eyes, afraid of what would happen next. Suddenly, Jonah felt himself swallowed whole. The sea roared around him, and he was engulfed by darkness. He was inside a giant fish. The walls of the belly pressed in on him, and he could hear the muffled sounds of the ocean outside. It was dark, and it smelled fishy, but Jonah was alive. He could feel the slimy scales around him and the rhythmic movement of the fish swimming. He stayed inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as he waited in the cramped, suffocating space. Jonah prayed to God from inside the fish. He poured out his heart, feeling the weight of his disobedience and the gravity of his situation. He admitted he was wrong to disobey. He acknowledged his mistakes and sought forgiveness with a sincere heart. He promised that if God saved him, he would go to Nineveh. He vowed to fulfill his mission and deliver God's message. God heard Jonah's prayer. He commanded the fish to spit Jonah onto dry land. With a mighty heave, the fish expelled Jonah, and he found himself on the shore, grateful and determined to keep his promise. Jonah was so relieved to be free. After being in the belly of the great fish for 3 days and 3 nights, he was finally given a second chance. He set off for Nineveh immediately, determined to deliver the message that God had entrusted to him. 40 days, he shouted, 40 days and Nineveh will be destroyed. His voice echoed through the bustling streets and marketplaces, reaching the ears of everyone in the city. The people of Nineveh were surprised to hear Jonah's message. They had never heard such a dire warning before, and it struck fear into their hearts. They listened to Jonah and believed his words. The urgency and sincerity in his voice convinced them that he was speaking the truth. They stopped doing bad things. The entire city came to a standstill as people reflected on their actions and decided to change their ways. They even put on sackcloth and ashes to show they were sorry. This was a traditional sign of repentance, and it showed their genuine remorse for their past behavior. God saw their change of heart. He was moved by their sincere repentance and decided to show mercy. He forgave them and did not destroy the city. The people of Nineveh were overjoyed and grateful for this divine act of compassion. Jonah was happy that the people were saved, but he still didn't understand why God forgave them so easily. He struggled to comprehend the depth of God's mercy and grace, but he knew that the people of Nineveh had been given a new lease on life.